Since October, agents along the 70-mile stretch of border here in El Centro sector have seen a nearly 400% increase in family units arriving in the sector. And you compare that with other years, pretty amazing. But what we've done and what we're doing, you're going to see some very, very strong results. And as soon as the barriers or the walls, I like calling them walls, that's what they are, go up, you're going to have a tremendous impact. Where we are going to be in a little while, I've heard from people in that area that the impact has been incredible. It's a colossal surge, and it's overwhelming our immigration system, and we can't let that happen. So as I say, and this is our new statement, the system is full, can't take you anymore. Whether it's asylum, whether it's anything you want, it's illegal immigration, can't take you anymore. We can't take you. Our country is full, our area is full, the sector is full. Can't take you anymore, I'm sorry, can't happen. So turn around, that's the way it is. If you look at our southern border, the number of people and the amount of drugs, human trafficking. The human trafficking is something that nobody used to talk about. I talk about it. It's a terrible thing. It's ancient, and it's never been bigger than it is modern right now, today. All over the world, by the way, not just here, all over the world. Human trafficking, a terrible thing. And they come into the areas of the border where you don't have the wall. They don't come through your points of entry. They come into areas where you don't have the wall. And they make a left or they make a right. They come right into the country, loaded up with people in many cases, and it's pretty sad.
President Trump, he's at the border, the U.S.-Mexico border, Calexico, California. That border's Mexicali. They've got a new wall there. You couldn't tell from the perspective, but it's actually 30 feet high, just so you get a perspective of how big it is. He was saying there that not only has it decreased dramatically the number of illegals pouring over the border there, which had been very porous, but also there have been home invasions and incidents like that. You had ICE officials, patrol agents, even local police talking about how some of the illegal entries had fallen by 70% as a result of what they say is a result of the wall. We have with us in studio Curtis Ellis. He was a senior policy advisor on trade, and of course the president was really very demonstratively friendly to the president of Mexico, who's a left-winger. A lot of people didn't think he'd be very helpful to this president, but he said that this president has helped him a lot in cutting back on the Central Americans going through Mexico on their way to the border. So that might, at the same time, he's talking about the possibility of shutting the border and tariffs. It's kind of an odd place to be with Mexico right now, with the trade deal sort of hanging in the balance.
That's right. Well, the same way President Trump surgically targeted the tariffs against China to their key industries that would cause the most pain, the auto industry is key for Mexico. And threatening tariffs against the auto industry is a real leverage point, a pressure point where you can get some response.
Do you think, forgive me for interrupting, but do you think that is why the Mexican president is being so helpful right now, is because he was concerned about this?
Definitely, that is part of it. They want the new NAFTA agreement as much as President Trump and our people in America want it. Mexico did not do well under NAFTA. A few of the elites did. The people who own the auto parts plants did, but the Mexican people as a whole were hammered, and AMLO knows that. The president of Mexico, the populist leader of Mexico, understands that. And so they want a new NAFTA as well. This would derail it if they don't crack down on the immigration transshipment, if you will.
Curtis, it's Carol Roth. I'm having a bit of a hard time reconciling some of the president's words versus actions. Obviously, he's been talking about an emergency. We just heard from a number of the sheriffs that this is a crisis. Why would he give Mexico a one-year window if this is something that requires emergency action?
Well, 1 year is sort of the outside. He wants to see them do it for a full year, not just do it on day 363. They have to do it today and keep it up through that full year. That's the window he's talking about.
Curtis, I don't think anybody on, well, maybe on this panel will disagree that the president is basically right about Mexico, that they don't do enough to stop, they have drug crime at their border. Their whole country is a pass-through entity where people can just come through. It's like an LLC into our country. They don't, they're not helping the immigration problem. They actually need to pay for some of the wall. But the way you just brought up the car tariff, that's our auto industry. Like, they went down there to avoid regulations, a bunch of costs of being in business in America. They're going down there to save money.
Right.
And putting tariffs on it, if it's not explicitly to adjust for that, if it's just to say, well, we're punishing Mexico, it's not the Mexican car industry. Like, how is this going to get to point B where they're helping us stop this problem, which is largely their problem, but they're outsourcing it to us, essentially.
Right.
How do we fix that with tariffs on the auto industry?
Well, as the president said, if you put a 25% tariff on automobiles made in Mexico, that industry is going to come right back to Michigan. It used to be in Flint, as he said. We used to make cars in Flint, and you couldn't drink the water in Mexico. Now they're made in Mexico, and you can't drink the water in Flint. You start putting that 25% tariff on, it's as if they had all the expenses of being in Michigan. Well, you might as well be in Michigan. So that will put pressure on the Mexican government because they don't want to lose that industrial base, that tax base that they have. So you get
Hi, Curtis. This is Adam Lashinsky with Fortune Magazine in San Francisco. So if I understand correctly from David, you were helpful in negotiating the new NAFTA bill. So the new NAFTA treaty. So we've negotiated a treaty. It hasn't been ratified by Congress yet. How do you feel the Mexican negotiators, what do you think the Mexican negotiators feel when the president says, you know what, I've got some new terms to throw at you today because I just woke up this morning and decided there should be new terms?
Good question. Well, it's a good question, and it's a good day to be asking that question because just today the Mexican government said they are not going to renegotiate NAFTA. That is their message to the Democrats. The Democrats, the congressional Democrats, particularly the House Democrats, are saying, we want to renegotiate it over the labor protections, we want to renegotiate it over the pharmaceutical industry protections, and they've got to reopen and renegotiate the whole thing. The Mexicans said, no thanks, this is it. You're going to take it or leave it the way it is. So they're definitely going to respond when President Trump says, you better do something about this border, or else
Curtis, you're not answering my question.
You're
not answering my question. Why would anybody negotiate with President Trump when he's going to renegotiate it when he feels like it? We have a deal.
Well, we do have a deal, and apparently they did negotiate with President Trump because we have a deal. What we're talking about, and I think what you're hitting on here, is the president is not afraid to take unilateral action to defend America's interests. Every previous administrations acted like these negotiations were like talking to Mother Teresa, and they came in as if they were Mother Teresa, and across the table you had pit bulls. President Trump is acting like a pit bull. He wants to make sure we get the best deal for America. There's no point in having a U.S.-Mexico trade agreement if we don't have a country anymore. And if we don't have a border, we don't have a country.
Curtis, I want to go back to, it's Gary Smith here, I want to go back to a point that Jonas was making. I'm not sure, per studies that I've seen, that the tariffs are going to help the auto industry, basically because it's very few cars that are made entirely in Mexico. You know, the Center for Automotive Research has said auto sales will actually there will be about 400,000 auto jobs lost. You're going to increase the price of cars almost $3,000, and light vehicle sales will go down. So this is the total sum effect of these tariffs on the auto industry. It's not going to help the auto industry. It's going to be detrimental to the auto industry. I understand the wall from an keeping out illegals perspective, and I agree with it. But economically, haven't you seen it just does not make sense at all?
Well, I guess they came up with this analysis today or in the last 2 days when the president said 25%. These are probably about the same cabal of people who said when the president put tariffs on China, it was going to tank the economy, cause the stock market to crash, and we'd have a worldwide global recession. We see how that's worked out. Our economy is doing quite well, thank you. Wages are up, employment is up. So I wouldn't put too much stock in some of these back-of-the-envelope prognostications. However, to your point, the auto industry also includes American workers. And if in this hypothetical scenario, and I hate to do hypotheticals, the auto industry were to move back to Michigan, there would be a lot a huge segment of the auto industry that did quite well. I'm talking about auto workers. I'm talking about people who work in auto parts plants. The president has a responsibility to more than simply the shareholders, the institutional shareholders of Ford, GM, and Fiat Chrysler. He has a responsibility to the communities across this country that have been devastated by the wholesale relocation of our auto industry to other parts of the world.
Curtis, Alice, listen, we thank you very much for coming. I'm sorry we had to break in with the breaking news, but I'm sure you're used to the president breaking in on what you're saying before. Probably happened several times. All right. Good to see you. Thank you for coming here.